In accordance with the Open Public Meeting Act of the State of New Jersey, adequate notice of this special meeting of the Franklin Township Council was made by the posting on the bulletin board in the municipal building and the township website, and electronically transmitted to the officially designated newspapers, indicating that this special meeting would take place in the municipal building, council chambers, at 7 p.m. on Tuesday, July 19, 2022.
Would all please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which nation under Madam Master Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilman Embarrasson?
Here.
Councilwoman Francois? Here. Mayor Kramer?
Here.
Councilman Onijaka?
Here.
Councilmember Potosnik?
Present.
Deputy Mayor Pruitt?
Present.
Councilwoman Udine?
Here.
Councilman Vassanella? Councilman Wright?
Here.
Mayor, I'd like to make a motion.
You're recognized, Deputy Mayor Pruitt.
I would like that we move the public hearing and adoption of the ordinance on second reading up before public discussion.
I'll second that.
Moved and seconded, so we're moving the general public discussion. You're requesting to move the general public discussion till after this ordinance. There is a public discussion devoted specifically to this ordinance, so that people will have the ability to speak on that beforehand. Any other discussion on this motion? Do we need roll call?
No, you can do it by voice.
All in favor of changing the agenda as indicated, say aye. Aye. Opposed, say nay. Motion is carried. So again, what we just did is there will be a public discussion before we vote, but it will be a public discussion devoted to the ordinance. So we're now on to the second reading of the ordinance 4371-22, an ordinance amending the code of the Township of Franklin, County of Somerset, State of New Jersey, more particularly Chapter 112 development, intended primarily to address the development of warehouses in the business and industry zone, BI zone, and to make associated amendments to the land development ordinance is presented to the public for hearing and final adoption. The public hearing has been noticed as required. Do we have a motion to open to the public?
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. We are open to the public for a discussion specific to this ordinance. We will give you 3 minutes of time. You may only come up once, no yielding of time. And when you come up, please state your name and address, and if you are representing an organization, what organization you are representing. Anyone wishing to speak, please come up.
Good evening, members of council. My name is John Kaplan. I'm from the Herald Law Firm in Warren Township, New Jersey. It's 25 Independence Boulevard. We represent MCS Franklin 2, PES Franklin 2, and LLL 46 LLC. All three of those entities own Block 514, Lot 56, and Lot 56 Q Farm, otherwise known as 163 Weston Canal Road. Our office submitted a letter this morning. I only have 3 minutes. I'll let it stand as it is, but I do have with me a professional planner this evening, Peter Steck, and he would like to give a brief presentation as to this ordinance amendment.
Council, I think you might want to correct your address. It's not Weston Canal Road that you're client.
I'm sorry, Weston Road. I apologize.
Mr. Kaplan, it's kind of not the way it works here. So this isn't you're going to put on a witness. So you have 3 minutes to speak. If you want to have Mr. Steck have 3 minutes to speak, but this is not a planning board hearing. You don't get to put on a witness and question them and have them speak.
I have no questions.
Once you yield to him,
Once you yield to him, you're done.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you. My name is Peter Steck. I'm a licensed planner in New Jersey on behalf of the owner of Lot 56 in Block 514. It's a 62-acre parcel in the ROL zone. I've been asked to look at the ordinance and to make some planning comments. I wish I had more than 3 minutes, but I will try to keep to the time limit. The ordinance is misleading, in my opinion, because the major change is to eliminate the ROL zone entirely from the municipality. That reference is not even in the title of the ordinance. So someone that is reading the ordinance isn't alerted to the major change that is being accommodated by this. This is a reversal of established policies. Your 2006 master plan, as well as the latest amendment in 2020, all recommended ROL zoning for the properties that are currently in the ROL zone. There's been no master plan adopted, an amendment adopted that has recommended anything different. When this is sent to the planning board, there's a consistency review. The consistency is not just with the goals of the master plan, it's with the details. What did the land use plan say? There's nothing in the ordinance that says you're amending your zoning map. Your ordinance just says that you're amending the text. There is no justification for why the ROL zone is being split. Our parcel is going into the RR3. The southern section is going into the A zone. There's no rationale in the ordinance of why those zones were picked. For example, not even the B1 zone that we abut to the north. There is a fleeting reference to the master plan in the summary section of your ordinance, suggesting that it's consistent. It is not, in my opinion. The goals that are cited were the exact same goals that were used to support the ROL zoning.
By the way, Mr. Steck, you might want to take a look at sections 1, 2, and 3, and 4 of the ordinance, which all amend the zoning map, just for the record.
Okay. One of the ordinance, in my opinion, is devoid of a rationale of why you are doing this that is substantially inconsistent with the master plan. I think that this constitutes reverse spot zoning. As you know, the municipal land use law...
That's your time.
Okay. The municipal land use law requires that a zoning...
So that's your time.
Your time's up. Thank you. Just so that as we go into the hearing, Mr. Vormacher, there was the planning board actually reviewed the application and found that it was consistent with the master plan. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Thank you.
Anyone else wishing to speak?
No.
The slight change of subject. Robert Schmidt, 539 Elizabeth Avenue. I have some observations and concerns to share. And while my focus is on the traffic on Elizabeth Avenue,
No, sir, this is not a general public.
it relates to warehouses in
Okay.
that the warehouses cause trucks, and trucks are detrimental to at least some of the citizenry.
I'm sorry, proceed.
Thank you. So while my focus is on Elizabeth Avenue, I believe that what I'm talking about here applies to many of the streets in the area, Weston Road, Cedar Grove Lane, Amwell Road, and such. The truck traffic on Elizabeth Avenue has been slowly increasing for years, but now it looks to be increasing really quickly. The new warehouses are a large contributing factor to that increase. It used to be rare to see a tractor trailer on Elizabeth Avenue. Not anymore. On May 12th, I counted 24 semis cruising up and down Elizabeth Avenue. That's of this year. July 15th, last Friday, I counted 63. And I got the pictures to prove it, if anybody cares. I'm concerned that that truck traffic will continue to increase. At what point will we have 18-wheelers backed up at every traffic light in the area? The increased truck traffic has many detrimental impacts on the residents and citizens at large. I will discuss 3: noise pollution, air pollution, public safety. The noise problem from trucks is serious. From a health standpoint, it's more than just annoying. It's bad for mental health. Noise causes stress, and gee, we have enough of that already. From a property value standpoint, it's disastrous. The noise problem will wipe out residential property values on Elizabeth Avenue and anywhere nearby if it hasn't already. As for air pollution, we know diesel pollution is very bad for your health. As the truck traffic increases, before too long, you'll be able to measure it in your backyards and living rooms. Not good. And thirdly, from a public safety standpoint, I would really like everybody to just kind of think about, crushed cars, crushed people in front of or at the entrance of Colonial Park. In that, just today with my radar gun, I tagged a semi going 47 miles an hour right there past the entrance to Colonial Park. Anyway, in conclusion, let me say simply that I really don't want to see any of that happen. So I would request you do anything possible to reduce the truck traffic or at least prevent it from increasing anymore. Immediately disallowing any further warehouses would be a good start.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much, Mr. Mayor, members of the council, members of the public. My name is Francis P. Lindis. My offices are located at 21 Clyde Road here in sunny Somerset, New Jersey, and I'm pleased to represent Northern Nurseries, Inc. Northern Nurseries, Inc. is the owner of Block 507.14, Lot 60.01, located at 487 Elizabeth Avenue. This site has an interesting history, an interesting zoning and planning history. As far back as we can remember, and I go back a long ways, the property was always zoned industrial, first in the M1 zone, and then caught up in the conversion to the B1 zone back in 2020. So it's consistently been in an M1 industrial zone. This particular ordinance, I believe, is defective. I believe it can be challenged, and I believe it can be successfully challenged on legal grounds. The master plan has been very consistent with respect to this property and other properties currently located in the B1 zone. I go back to the latest re-examination of the master plan back in 2016, confirming the industrial status of this area. 2017, the township looked forward because of your very good professionals, Vince Dominack and Mark Healy, authored the Strategic Zoning and Economic Development section of the master plan, which followed up the 4-ward study, all of which kept this property and others zoned light industrial. And it's very important that the council consider the relationship of a master plan to a zoning ordinance. Not to be deterred, there was a master plan update in August of 2020, again, strategic zoning and economic development. Again, followed up in September 2020, master plan update, strategic zoning and economic development review, and that suggested the elimination of the M1 and M2 zones, not for industrial purposes, but to place it in a B1 zone, also industrial, which currently is the zoning for the property, among others. In December 2020, the ordinance was actually adopted, creating the B1 zone, among others. And that followed master planning. And I can't emphasize enough the legal nature of a master plan, which has gained status over the years and should be followed. The shift recently and the procedure recently to send it to the planning board, an ordinance was introduced. Apparently there's been public opposition, and the ordinance went to the planning board for the consistency review, and I respectfully submit that a change occurred, at least in the opinion of Mr. Healy. But I can tell you that the ordinance is not consistent in any respect with the master plan.
Thank you very much.
I just want to finish in about 10 seconds. I have great respect for Vince Dominack, your Director of Economic Development, as well as Mr. Healy, and I think they did the right thing professionally until this recent turn of events. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Kiki Anastasakos. I live at 3204 Enclave Circle in Canal Walk. You've seen us here several times in the past month. We are extremely concerned about the sprawl of warehouses. Well, we have one warehouse that's about to be built 200 feet from our backyard on Metlerson Schoolhouse. So that is our primary concern. But I know we're not talking specifics. We're talking about the rezoning ordinance tonight. And so I just want to say that we support the ordinance, but and we thank you. And I have two questions. The first one is, I'm wondering whether this ordinance that you're about to examine tonight is too little too late. And by that I mean, if one looks at the conditions surrounding the ordinance, for example, the fact that there are, as we all know, already 5 applications on the docket of the public, of the planning board that are not going to be affected by this ordinance. And there is a state mandated requirement of a 20-day grace period starting tomorrow, assuming that you approve this ordinance, which leaves plenty of a large enough window, or a wide door, I should say, for additional warehouses. So my question is, isn't in fact this rezoning ordinance going to be null and void after all this is said and done? My second question has to do with a rezoning that you did a couple of years ago when you combined the corporate business zone with the manufacturing zone, and you created this mega zone called B1, right? It was renamed B1, and if I remember what I had read correctly, that was done because you were concerned, the council was concerned that there were so many empty corporate buildings post-COVID, right, people working from home, et cetera, and that you were hoping that by combining the two zones, there would be some reuse of those empty corporate buildings. So my question is, could you give us an update as to how well these empty corporate buildings are being reused? And if not,
Your time's up.
why, thank you, why can't, I'm finishing, why aren't you, in fact, providing more incentives for warehouse builders
Your time is up.
to utilize the empty corporate buildings? Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor, council members. Luke Pontier of the law firm Day Pitney, address 1 Jefferson Road in Parsippany, New Jersey, here tonight on behalf of Woodmont Industrial Partners, LLC, which is the contract purchaser of the Northern Nurseries property. I do have 3 exhibits with me tonight. Is it okay if I bring those up and to be passed around?
Yes, you're still limited to 3 minutes.
Understood. Thank you. You did already hear tonight from counsel for Northern Nurseries, but I wanted to provide some additional context and objections on the record tonight. Since going under contract, Woodmont has undergone substantial due diligence and worked with township officials on plans to develop the property with a warehouse use. Woodmont submitted an initial plan to the township in the winter of 2021 depicting a warehouse on the property, and it did receive substantive comments back from several township officials, and in reliance on that feedback, Woodmont updated its plans to create a fully conforming variance-free application in compliance with township codes. Woodmont has invested substantial sums of money on its due diligence and development of this property. As you might imagine, after receiving substantive comments from township officials, Woodmont was quite surprised to learn about this ordinance that would rezone the property and render warehousing a non-permitted use. Not once did the township notify my client that this new ordinance was in the pipeline. To turn and reiterate to a few policy objections, the ordinance is completely inconsistent with the goals set forth in the master plan. One of the very vague goals that was set forth in the summary of the ordinance is that this will further the goal of the master plan to encourage commercial and industrial development in areas with access to major regional highways and in established areas. If you'll turn to the first exhibit, it should be the first page in your packet. It shows an aerial view with a traffic route highlighted in yellow. You'll see that the property is located 2.7 miles from I-287. It has clear access to a major regional highway. If you turn to the second exhibit, which is the second page, again, it's a Google map view with current and approved warehouse uses. And as you can see, the property is located in an established industrial corridor. The Vision Hardware warehouse is operating directly across from Elizabeth Avenue, and another warehouse was just approved on the immediately two adjacent lots. If you look back at the truck route on the first exhibit, which is the route that truck traffic from this property would use, that is also the same route that truck traffic is already using for the existing and to be developed warehouses. Prohibiting the warehouse use on this property will not make any changes to that. It's clear that the corridor of Elizabeth Avenue, and even more specifically this property, is in an established corridor with easy access to the highway.
Finish up, please.
To summarize, my objection is both equity and policy driven. The rushed adoption of this ordinance is completely inequitable, and at a minimum, we would request that equity dictate a delay in any further consideration of the ordinance to allow for consultation with those relying on the current zoning of the properties. Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Marlon Kwan, 28 Jay's Corner. Thank you, Council, for letting us speak tonight. I think it's very important that you hear from the residents in the neighborhood. Let me just read this because I want to be perfectly clear. It is clear that selected professionals that wish to reject this ordinance is all about money. They don't live here and they won't have an effect on their lives. It can't be just all about money. While I understand that economics are a vital part of our township residents, people and quality of life need to be taken into consideration. I applaud the council and the prompt response to our calling. I hope that this ordinance will pass tonight and is the beginning and not the end of your efforts by rejecting variances and exceptions to enhance the beauty, enhance our quality of life, and ultimately enhance our properties. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Grisel Diaz. I'm a veteran. My husband is a veteran too. I would like to say a voice and a word for those who live at 433 Vanderbilt Avenue in their intersection with Hamilton. I want to note that I noticed that you guys don't take notes, so I hope you got good memory. I personally work with AI and the federal government, and a lot of the decisions that we are making right now in our society, it looks like are being driven by the algorithm. They are not being driven by humans. So I would like to say this. Have you considered the impact on water pollution? I know because my first research when I was in high school was on water pollution. None of these warehouses would guarantee you, would guarantee me, nor my little daughter over there, that the disposal of chemicals or any byproduct, whether it's gas pollution, noise pollution, or water, we touch the soil, which many of us have wells. None of you pay to test the well water. We do, okay? If something happens in our vicinity, of our houses, chemically, in that nature, we had to pay. We pay the taxes, okay? So we vote for you to represent us. So I hope and I trust that you will take your hat as a professional and put the hat as a human, okay? So do you guys consider the displacement of the ecosystem? I did my research. That's my profession. I noted that a lot of this land is wetland and is protected land. So no one noticed that? So no one knows that there are species there that are protected? So someone did the homework, because I did. So this affects our community. Please consider that the volume of kids that cross the street on Hamilton, specifically in front of my house, where it's going to be a street right there. I'm going to open my door, I'm going to see a big building. Who opens the door and see a big building every morning? For the last 3 years, the high volume, and I quote, has been increased. My husband has PTSD, and I had to deal with the noise that affects him. Do you consider that part of your equation? Because the algorithm definitely did not. We human made the difference. So, consider the kids that cross the street and the number of accidents in that particular intersection between Hamilton and 433 Vanderbilt. More than 10 accidents right in front where they're going to make that entrance. Any amendments? Do we have room for that? Thank you.
Janet Goldstein, 47 Saratoga Court and Canal Walk. I'm particularly concerned about the 20 days which will pass between the time this ordinance is enacted and the time at which it actually takes effect. I want to know what constitutes submission. Every one of these gentleman who gets up says, oh, well, in 2020, I discussed it with you. In 2019, I discussed it with you. Is that a submission? What exactly is a submission? If I own a piece of land and I draw a rectangle on it and I say, that's where I'm building the warehouse, is that a submission? I want to have a definition right here in the public meeting, because we have a scenic overlay ordinance that specifically mentions Mettler's Lane. But somehow it doesn't apply to Mettler's Lane. Somehow, not only is the developer allowed to destroy everything that is scenic about Mettler's Lane, but we don't even get the setback that's talked about in this scenic overlay ordinance. And somehow, every time we try to get anything that will make things better for us, all of a sudden it evaporates. It's not there anymore. So I want you to tell me exactly what constitutes a submission.
Dominic,
Vince, you can answer or I'll answer, but go ahead. That's fine.
The municipal land use law, excuse me?
we're going to...
Maybe, why don't we let me answer it?
Oh, okay.
The answer is the municipal land use law defines what an application is, and our ordinance defines all of the documents you have to submit when you submit a land use application. So if you go and you look at our ordinance says if you have a site plan application, you have to submit the following documents, and that's where it's defined.
But isn't this ordinance just like the guy shooting off the pistol for the race to start?
No, and once again, this ordinance is not about a specific project, so I understand that there are a lot of people here about a specific project, but this is an ordinance about these zones generally in the town, so you're asking questions. The answer is this ordinance will apply to anybody who files a complete application after it goes into effect. You're welcome.
It's fine. Thank you.
Don't start yet.
He spoke.
Tough crowd, in the words of Rodney Dangerfield. Frank Vitolo, Sills, Cummins, and Gross, on behalf of Heller Industrial Parks. Heller owns 9 lots in Franklin Township, some of which it's owned for more than 40 years. On 5 of those lots, Heller's has constructed warehouse and distribution facilities, which are permitted uses. On average, the Heller properties generate $800,000 a year in tax revenue. To put that in perspective, that's about 80 residential dwellings with no impact on the schools. Heller businesses also generate good-paying jobs, approximately 100 across all these properties. This ordinance is going to have a devastating impact on their facilities. Their current facilities are going to become non-conforming, and you've basically instituted a moratorium on any new warehouse development. There's an old saying, there's the right way to do something, and there's the wrong way to do it. The right way is to make significant changes to a zoning ordinance, first by conducting a master plan reexamination. The wrong way is to skip it, leaving material inconsistencies between this ordinance and the master plan. The right way to support a zoning change based on traffic is to commission a traffic study. The wrong way is to skip the traffic study and base your findings on unfounded assumptions and suppositions. The right way to develop a new zoning ordinance is to engage the property owners that are going to be impacted. The wrong way to develop a zoning ordinance is to ignore the impacted property owners and schedule hearings in the middle of the summer. The right way to revise a zoning ordinance to restrict warehouse use is to examine all of the affected properties and formulate a rational set of conditions and restrictions, and that acknowledges that no two properties are alike. The wrong way is to establish an arbitrary 500-foot buffer around residential zones, some of which are not even residential zones. The right way to enact a new zoning ordinance is to understand the unintended consequences. The wrong way is to fail to even consider them. I know you guys are better than this. You know why? Because I looked in the files, and you know what I found? Master plan reexaminations. You didn't do it here. Why not? The other thing I want to say, and I have limited time, your ordinance relies on a draft planning report from the state of New Jersey. Comments aren't even due until July 29th. It won't even be adopted till August. So if you adopt this ordinance, it's based on a draft document. So if the document is changed, your ordinance is not even good as the paper it's written on. You have to wait until the planning guidance at least is finalized. It's a fatal flaw. And just one of them. There are many. So do the right thing. Don't put this in the hands of lawyers for the next 4 years. Table this ordinance and do it right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Dina Lux, 51 Patriots Way in Somerset. Wow. Interesting that there are all of these people in suits up here talking about the loss of possible profits that they're going to make. Very disheartening, and I have to applaud this council for listening. And no, it wasn't a flaw that they heard this during this, that these hearings are taking place during the summer when senior citizens who live here are here in New Jersey rather than down in Florida as snowbirds. We are here. You see how many people have been showing up at your meetings. We're not going away. And we support you 100% on this ordinance. Master plan, no master plan, you're doing this to protect the residents of your town and your constituents. This is what's important. This is something that I totally applaud you in doing. And I hope that you vote for this ordinance, in favor of this ordinance. I kind of heard just from the gentleman before me that there was almost a veiled threat that you're going to be tied up in lawsuits. Like, what is that about? That concerns me. That you should, I just hope you're not feeling threatened by that and that you don't knock back and support an ordinance that you put forth. So thank you very much.
Matt Seckler from Stonefield Engineering, 92 Park Avenue in Rutherford, New Jersey, representing Heller Industrial Parks as a planner and traffic engineer. As part of my review of the ordinance, and I know we've heard it from a number of other individuals that have reflected the fact that we don't believe that this reflects the findings that were within the strategic zoning and economic development recommendations published in September 2020. It doesn't reflect the findings of the 2006 reexamination plan or the four-ward zoning plan as well. In addition, from a traffic engineering perspective, I have reviewed the WSP circulation plan, which was published in 2021 for the township. At no point during that circulation plan did I identify traffic conditions specific to the industrial developments that my client, Heller Industrial Parks, is creating or generating or causing. However, a large number of the 9 lots that my client owns are being considered non-conforming because they cannot move the properties 500 feet away from the nearby residential zone, which actually is the school, which came in after the industrial parks were constructed. So at one point, the township felt the school was appropriate within 500 feet of our properties, and now they feel it's not appropriate. It's important to note, we're looking at a proximity ordinance, which it seems like this township has taken with a broad brush. It's important to recognize that access is more important than how the crow flies. For a vehicle leaving our industrial park to get to the residential zone would require over a mile transport in the wrong direction away from 287. From our property site, we would take Heller Park Lane, Schoolhouse Road, Cottontail, down towards the 287 interchange. That goes on does not pass one residential property, not one residential zone on that path to the interstate. That is exactly what is recommended within your reexamination reports, within the economic development recommendations, and has been supported throughout the township for the last few decades, is having internal development, infill development that has access not on residential roads, but through industrial zones to the interstate to help keep the thriving industrial properties active. Again, this ordinance, by taking a broad brush, and I respect the fact you're looking out for residents, by taking a broad brush, you are grouping in some developments that are actually the ideal type of developments you want to maintain by having them specific on roadways that are not on residential areas and putting them in with the non-conforming or non-permitted sites. I ask you to take a more fine look at the various lots and zones and maybe consider ordinances that look at access and access to roads that go through residential zones instead of a property that happens to back up to a school but has no access to it in any way and honestly predates the time that the school was constructed. So again, I ask that you table this ordinance with the idea that you would take a more finite look or fine look at the lots that you are putting in this non-permitted condition.
Anyone else wishing to speak? I'd appreciate it if people lined up, and that way we'd go along. By the way, there's several copies over there of a FAQ about this ordinance if people wish to look at them.
Good evening. Steve Toth, 1030 Hamilton Street. Thank you for having the hearing tonight. I just have a quick question. I received a notice from the township, and I noticed most of the folks here are, or appear to be from the Metlers and Elizabeth Avenue area that are cited in the maps that were in the enclosed communication. I am on Hamilton Street. I am block 103, lot 5, 1030 Hamilton Street. I am between Epic Millwork and the National Guard Armory. Mm-hmm. When I received the notice, and I noticed in here it says, for properties that are directly affected, and I believe that there was, something, within 200 or 500 feet of the project. I'm wondering why I got noticed.
Because there's a BI zone near your home.
Okay, so I believe that I am, because I'm on the same side of the street as Epic Lumber, so I am the BI.
So you are in the BI zone.
Okay, it's not B1, it's BI.
It's BI, Business and Industry, is what it stands for, to educate anyone who might have called it B1.
That's what I wanted to. Yes. A little grammar police here. But the other, there was one of my neighbors that was here from Vanderbilt who expressed similar concerns about that. So that answers the question, because I think that there was something in here that said that warehouse development and that area would be contingent on a number of factors rather than directly permissible, it would become contingent?
The conditional,
That's it.
It's a conditional use in the BI zone, and one of the conditions requires that it be no closer than 500 feet from a residential zone.
Okay, now, across the street from
Is a residential zone.
So does that mean no
All of
houses?
the BI zone in the one that you live is within 500 feet
So does
of
that
a
mean that-
residential zone, which means that it is not a permitted use in that zone.
But could a warehouse developer come in and ask for some waiver?
A warehouse developer
They would require a use variance from the zoning board, correct.
Okay, because I've been approached, and that was my question and my concern when I came here tonight.
That's the question. We can't eliminate the possibility of a variance, but we can make it a in this case, if they don't meet the conditions, they would require essentially a use variance.
And would the residents of the town, my neighbor on Vanderbilt, myself, who lives like right in the middle of that area, would we be able to state our objections to something?
So if we're talking about a specific property, if you're within 200 feet of that property, you would get formal notice.
Right.
But even if you weren't, you'd be able to come to the zoning board and on the record.
My objections be heard, or would they be given greater weight again?
Well, if you say them, they'll be heard, but the answer is if you're asking me whether or not, because you object to it, it means that the zoning board will rule in your favor, the answer is no. The zoning board is a quasi-judiciary board. They hear the facts, they apply the law, and then they make a decision. So the answer is yes, of course what you say will be heard, but I can't tell you that if you stand up and say, I object to that development across the street, that it doesn't get built.
And could I ask for certain conditions to be satisfied?
Well, you could ask for whatever you want. They'd have to be legal.
Right.
And the board would have to rule on them.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Next person.
Good evening, council members. My name is John Lopresti. I live at 22 Payne Way in the Canal Walk community. I've sat there and I've listened to quite a few attorneys. It must be nice to be an attorney. They speak well. They can be very convincing, and sometimes I wish I were one. But anyway, I'm not here as an attorney. I'm here as a resident of Canal Walk, which, as you all know, is a 55 and over community. And first, I want to thank you for the time that you devoted to our community. We had the opportunity of meeting with some of your council people on 2 occasions that I can think of. And I see sitting here to my right, Vincent Dominic, who was here at our community just about a week or so ago. So I want to thank you for that. And the only other thing I would really like to say to all of you, of course, thank you for giving us the opportunity of speaking, even those of us who are not lawyers, but I heard a lot about money that has been spent, and people have a lot of interest in the warehouses and whatever. But I have to tell you quite honestly that the person who impressed me the most was the lady who talked about the school children and the cars and the accidents and whatever. And it's called, as you all know, the human factor. And if I had one question to ask you, one favor, is whatever you do, please remember the human factor. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. My name is Fred Puglisi from the law offices of Ferdinand Puglisi, 503 Washington Avenue, Kenilworth, New Jersey. And I'm here today representing the Torsiello organization, who owns property located at 1, 2, and 3 Executive Drive. For some of you who may not know, this property is only 1/2 mile from 287. And it's the portion of the town, of the map, that is north of 287. And I have a planner here that will discuss why I feel that you should table this ordinance and conduct a carve-out for the area north of 287, which would make this ordinance more consistent with your master plan. I will submit, and I'll just leave it with this, not one vehicle would pass a single residence when it's going to 287 or from 287 if it's going to my client's property. Not one residence. However, because the back of my client's property abuts a graveyard, which is zoned a residential zone, it's going to be affected by this ordinance. So I would respectfully request that after you hear my planner's testimony, that you reconsider the ordinance and conduct a carve-out for the area north of 287.
No, sir, you may not speak again.
Here on behalf of
Doesn't matter. He can hand out his report, but he doesn't get to speak again.
Well, then, I would just ask that that you review his report and take into consideration that my client's property is consisting of office space, which is mostly vacant as we sit here today. You know, if my client were able to change this area or change the properties into warehouses, you'll be bringing more ratables into town, whereas now his property is about 80% vacant. And that's one of the purposes of the master plan, by the way, to encourage commercial industrial development with areas within 287 and with less impact on residential zones. So I would just ask that you take that into consideration for a carve-out for this property north of 287. And that's all I have. Thank you.
Anyone else wishing to speak?
Good evening. My name is Percy Sanders. I'm here on behalf of the Somerset Community Action Program and Wake Up the People.
You were to speak about the ordinance?
Only the ordinance.
So just to clarify, his chair is about to die. So I don't know if there's can be exception to rule.
We're in the middle of a public hearing on an ordinance.
I understand. So I just want to make sure it's stated on record. So that's all. So we'll wait. Just so you guys understand.
Sorry.
Can we plug it in someplace? Can we help you? Anybody else? Oh, that's great. Good.
I'll sort it out.
We'll sort it out.
Anyone else wishing to speak?
Hi, my name's Jan Brandt, and I live at 22 Bryant Court, and my home is 200 feet away from the proposed warehouse. I want to thank you for creating this ordinance tonight that you all are discussing, and I hope it gets passed. I know we need warehouses for all of you representing warehouses, and I'm not against warehouses, but they should not be next to people's houses. They shouldn't be next to schools. They shouldn't be built on wetlands or a scenic corridor. Warehouses should be placed away from homes, so I think probably you all wouldn't be in this mess if that was considered beforehand. And one thing about warehouses, if my neighbor is having a party at their house and they're just carrying on it's too loud and it's 10 o'clock at night, I could call up and complain. Now, in Franklin Township, you all have where the warehouses could operate 24/7. And if I'm living, people's homes are 100, 200 feet away from these warehouses, we can't have our windows open, we can't enjoy the fresh air. It really affects the quality of life that we're experiencing, that that we deserve to be able to open up our windows and not worry about where, trucks going into their warehouses. So really, warehouses need to be separated away from the homes and all, because it affects the quality of life as well as our health, and it also affects us financially, because when we have to sell our properties, the values decrease as well. So I really hope that this ordinance passes and that homes and residences are placed far away from warehouses.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Adebambo Olajutan. I live on 5 Shannon Court in Somerset, Jersey. I share the comments of several people here today because my house, right behind my house, are two pretty much warehouses, Agilex and Period. I pretty much live the sentiments that some people are thinking of living because of the noise and the smell of the perfume, and this has been going on for years. So that when I hear some people say, some attorneys here say it's flawed, that this ordinance is flawed, or they say things like it's arbitrary, there's nothing arbitrary about the 200-foot or the 500-foot distance. Even with that, I don't think that is enough, because the smell from the factory is air pollution by itself. I live it, even sitting in my backyard is a challenge. Now, I may be in a suit, I'm not an attorney, so it's clear. I'm a physician, and I know the impact of what smell does to the environment, specifically I'm a pulmonologist. So the bottom line is, I think this ordinance is great. I don't think it goes far enough, because the question I want answered here is, what happens to these factories that are existing already? Specifically, how do we deal with this?
Mr. Attorney, he's asking how this ordinance affects an existing factory.
An existing factory?
Yes. There's Agilex Technologies, Fragrances is right behind my house, less than 200 feet.
It doesn't affect any, it wouldn't affect any existing, it wouldn't affect any existing use, except to the extent that the use would not be able to expand or alter in violation of the ordinance. That's the answer to it. But this doesn't mean that if somebody has a warehouse that's in a zone that's 500 feet from a residential zone, that they have to stop operating the warehouse or stop operating that company. So that's not the way the law works.
Yes, so the problem then is pretty much what one of the speakers said, then that is too little too late then.
So, Mr. Reno, just maybe chime in a little bit here. The facility that this gentleman is speaking about is not a warehouse, it's a manufacturing facility, which is not what this ordinance addresses.
Oh, okay. So it doesn't affect it at all, then?
No.
All right. Good. Thank you.
Anyone else wishing to speak?
Seeing no one, nope, hold on another. Could be a bathroom break? Oh, no.
I recommend people line up if they wish to speak.
Hi, my name's Dennis McConnell. I live at 80 Willow Avenue in Far Hills, and I am here on behalf of a client of mine who owns the properties that were just addressed to you on Executive Drive, 1, 2, and 3 Executive Drive. It's the northern part of the Davidson Avenue, and as you set forth in the goals in your ordinance here, is literally within a half a mile of the 287 interchange. Also, it was also mentioned that the property sits next to the historic Ukrainian church graveyard, which is considered residential, which is having an impact on their property. At the beginning of this year, those properties were about 80% leased. I am the agent for those buildings. We were having an extremely difficult time finding tenants. We finally realized that the office market in Somerset has gone in a different direction, and it's not going to recover. So we made plans to move to take these buildings down and go with a warehouse use, just as the B1 zoning suggested. So as of when you sent out the registered letter, as I said, the buildings in the beginning of the year were 50% leased. As of today,
One Executive Drive will have 2 tenants totaling 19,000 square feet. 2 Executive Drive will have no tenants left, and 3 Executive Drive right now will have approximately 2,000 square feet. So the reason I'm sitting here is that the Torcio family made a move based on what you did in 2020. They were moving forward to empty the buildings, which was necessary for it to be turned into a warehouse, and they've done so. Like I said, we had 23 tenants in the buildings. We're down to 3, and you just pulled the rug out on us. Essentially, what you've done is you're going to leave 3 office buildings that are going to sit vacant. I think it's totally contrary to what this your master plan was. Again, we're probably, except for the Ukrainian church, we're the closest to 287. And I just wanted to say what I'm requesting is that you take another look. I am totally agree with the residents here that if it's going to affect a residential area, you should do something to protect them. But what you're doing here right now isn't protecting any industrial area, and essentially is you're taking one of your taxpayers and putting one hell of a burden on them right now. Thank you.
Anyone else wishing to speak?
Seeing no one chittering, standing, or lining up at the microphone, I move to close public comment on this ordinance.
Second.
Moved and seconded. No one coming up. All in favor of closing the public portion on this ordinance, say aye. Aye. Opposed, say nay. Motion is carried. We have a motion to adopt the ordinance.
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. I'm not going to describe the ordinance as I normally do. When we had the first reading, we had a significant presentation. I will call on the township attorney to talk about how to count the vote, I guess.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, there's a provision in the municipal land use law that's called notice of protest. And I noticed that we received a number of letters, some from the attorneys who spoke here tonight, that couched their objections as a notice to protest. In order for those to qualify as actual notices under the municipal land use law, they would have to represent 20% of the property owners in a given zone. And honestly, I haven't, because they came in the last day or so. I don't think we've made that determination as to whether they actually qualify. That being said, if they did qualify, they would require you to pass this with 6 votes as opposed to 5 votes. So, as a practical matter, and I can't make the determination until after, obviously, council votes. If the council does vote and there are 6 or more votes, then whether these actually qualified as notice to protest or not really become moot. If they don't, then we will have to make a determination, the planning staff and I, whether or not, as a result of those objections, you had enough votes to pass it. So I just wanted to
So as far as my discussion, this is a highly litigious situation. So I am going to, or I have left all my points to say to the attorney. Does council have any other discussion on this item? Seeing no one with a discussion, Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilman Harrison?
Yes.
Councilwoman Francois?
Yes.
Mayor Kramer?
Yes.
Councilman Onijaka?
Yes.
Councilmember Potosnik?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Pruitt?
Yes.
Councilwoman Udine?
Yes.
Councilman Rassanella? Councilman Wright?
Yes. The ordinance passes. We're going to take, well, actually, no, the only thing remaining is the public discussion. Do we have a motion to open to the public? So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor of opening to the public, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, say nay. Motion is carried. The meeting is now open to the public, to anyone who wants to speak about any item relating to government. Same rules apply, 3 minutes. May only speak once. State your name and address. If you're going to leave, please leave quietly. Guy? No.
Good evening. My name is Percy Sanders.
Excuse me, Percy, 1 second. Everyone, you should stay.
Mr. Wright, Mr. Sanders has the floor.
Again, my name is Percy Sanders. I'm at 2 Evergreen Road, Somerset, New Jersey. I'm here to represent and to speak on behalf of the Somerset Community Action Program and Week of the People. I am president of the Week of the People and vice president of the Somerset Community Action Program. I'm here to give a voice to senior citizens, the lower income, and our children. We had a dire need for help to deal with our children. I found it necessary for me to come out and to speak to you all and let you know that this is a dire need. I want to thank, the Hamilton Street Business District, who has been behind us and working with us, trying to make this thing happen. The Somerset Community Action Program and Week of the People are a 501c3 nonprofit charitable organization. It is my understanding that we are able, as these organizations, to receive grants and things like that. What we're trying to do is develop programs for our youth, our senior citizens, and the lower income. We're not just for the lower income or the kids and the seniors. This is a thing that we are doing that helps the whole community, the community at large. Our theme is community in unity. I'm here to also thank the Township municipality, but we are really looking at future events, future programs, and things like that. I feel that a thank you that we're giving you is dealing with your support. But we don't just need your support. We need financial support to create what we have a vision of, to cater to the lower income and the youth and senior citizens. With these programs, the Somerset Community Action Program has a record of being able to provide the manpower to man these programs. And what we need to do is actually get these finances in order that we so direly need.
Mr. Sanders, if you could sum up, please.
Okay. It's my understanding that there is a $28 million surplus that you don't have no idea what to deal with. So we're here to ask you to allow it to be a thing where Week of the People and the Somerset Community Action Program could show you what we can do.
Thank you, Mr.
That's what I
Sanders.
ask.
Nirmal Shah, 9 Congress Court in Canal Walk. So first of all, I am feeling very happy. I'm very proud of my town council for they've taken a bold action, and really it's the first step towards really making our town to be one of the model towns in the whole of New Jersey, a town that is responsive to the needs of our citizens, right? And what I'm looking from you now is that having taken this very bold first step to try and to respond to our citizens, what further actions are you planning to take in terms of making this town a model town, changing our environment, making our town to be really, really nice for people to live in? We have heard things from other people over here about all the issues they are facing with the pollution, etc., and that with the traffic. What are your plans to do the next steps? So, thank you very much, but I am proud of you.
Thank you.
All right, Benjamin Guy, 35 Patton Drive. So Mr. Sanders brought up real briefly about Week of the People. So I just want to highlight, because Mr. Wright has the sign over there, I just want to highlight just for the record, just for community involvement. So what Mr. Sanders does every year, and the committee does every year, is does events for the community itself, so that the community can actually bond and know each other as much as possible. So on August 13th, specifically, we'll be in Naming Lawyers Park, actually having a festival for backpack events given out for the kids. I actually do back to school day that's going to be going on there. August 14th, we'll actually be in Baskin Park, actually doing a faith initiative to actually bring the faith community together in the actual port to actually rejoice and bless the community as much as possible. And then August 20th, they'll actually be in Inman Park. That's what Mr. Sanders was trying to get to before he got cut off for his time. So what I want to do is I just want to say that all is welcome. All the community people are welcome to actually come out and support and try to bring bridge the community together. So the reason why I say community all together is because the definition of community, and I just want to make this characteristic point, is that it's a group of people that live in the same area or same place for a particular common good, right? Or fellowship or understanding of sharing common attitudes or interests and goals. So as you see right here, in this community that actually came out today, they're not having whatever's going on. The problem is that as a town, are we that strong together? And the problem is that we are not. And the people that have to take blame for that is the council. And the reason why I'm saying that today is because all this divide and all this other stuff that's going on is on the blame of the council. All these things that's happening, be behind stuff and everything else, it's on the council. You guys gotta get your act together. There's nothing else we can do about this, nothing else we can say. Only thing they can do is just say, hey, they're gonna vote you out. That's it. It's the only thing they can threaten you to do. Other than that, you guys got to act because you guys got elected as officials to be a part of this. All right? And again, just from community development standpoint, and that's what we're not doing here. All right? Definition of community development is, based on the United Nations, is a process where community members come together to take collective action and generate solutions to common problems. We don't do that here. Not at all. Not at all. All these problems we causing right now is all bad planning. It's bad planning right here. We haven't, like I said, for a developer to come in here and look at a master plan that hasn't been updated in a while, that's bad planning. You guys got to take accountability for that. Have to. There's nothing else you can do about that. Again, this town has grown, and me and Mr. Von Lucker go back and forth all the time about this. This town has grown tremendously over the last 15, 20 years. We haven't planned for that. We have not done anything to support that. First thing we did in the last 15, 20 years, based on the pushes back behind the scenes with Ms. Francois, is built a community center. It's not getting supported. I'll just be blatant about it. It's not getting supported. Funding-wise, resource-wise, support us.
Mr. Guy, thank you.
I didn't hear the beeper. What are you talking about?
Didn't go off for the 3 minutes is
Did you hear anything? I'm just trying to be blatant. Mr. Guy, your time is up. So I just want to make sure that we're paying attention right now. All right? Thank you.
My phone died.
My name is Carla Visser. I live in Somerset, Rhode. And I want to thank every one of you for taking a stand. And it may be rough going ahead and expensive, and we'll be paying for that, by the way. But I really congratulate your courage. But secondly, I was really saddened to hear the stories about pollution and the impact of warehouses on people's lives, which is really appalling. And one of the things I'm really concerned about is pollution. We're going to be having more and more warehouses, more and more trucks, and I'm wondering if our township could move forward after this ordinance and pass another ordinance governing pollution in the township caused by diesel. I'm sorry to say, I lived in Paris for a number of years, and we used to have tourist buses coming into Paris, dropping off the tourists and then idling under, the apartments and residential areas. It was really appalling, and they banned the buses, and the buses have to park outside of the city and then, find other means. Of course, there's public transportation, et cetera, but it was a way of reducing the pollution in the city because of all the tourist buses. We're going to be faced with a similar situation here, with more and more trucks barreling through our community. I really ask the council to take the next step to really govern the pollution that can occur and set rules to limit that. So that's what I wanted to mention to you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak?
I haven't started yet. Okay, now. How you doing? Thank you, council. I just want to start off with this here. I love this community.
Name and address, please, sir.
Oh, my name is Willie Goods, G-O-O-D-S. I stay at 600 Eastern Avenue, Somerset. Been here for over 30 years. I played here as a child when it was nothing but woods and forests. And I wandered through the woods and the forest along with it there. My uncle built a house in the early 50s, right on 27. And we played out of that dear house. I've been here for a lot of years. And I know that Franklin Township is a grand community, but they have a very opposition to change. We spoke about habitat and so forth, and sprawl. Well, when I see what's going on down in our neighborhood in Ward 4, it's a growth of all these apartments and so forth, and all these kids seeing the apartments going up that their parents aren't working in and that they can't afford to live in. So where do they move to? I know that we protect the species, the animal habitat, but what about the human habitat? We're not protecting that there. I see that, I am so glad that it only took you guys 50 years to give us a youth center. But why we got to make another 50 years for you to make that youth center work? The kids that go there, they don't know how to operate the equipment. They have no one to teach them how to use or scheduling out there. It's not set up right. With this new development you're going on Hamilton Street, you guys are getting taxes and you guys are getting revenue. But we're not seeing the money that put back into that community. We are in need. And one thing about that there is, if you guys don't give us affordable housing, that's affordable. I know we reached a certain quotable, but we have affordable housing quota. That doesn't make sense in a community that's growing. And it's not affordable. And then you got to go through all this red tape to get in it. How about you don't have a job and then you have to have a credit report? That doesn't make sense. And as Mr. Percy was saying, you guys have a surplus in this community. And that's coming from us. I've been paying taxes ever since I've been here. My taxes are more than double. And it's all because of the schools. Don't put this on the back of our schools. You councils are responsible for that. You guys make these taxes and so forth, and every year taxes go upward. That school report. Give me 10 seconds. It took me, so forth. We need an apprenticeship for our schools. In that community center, they have basketball.
Mr.
But they have
Craig, you need to
weights.
sum
That's
up.
to say, I asked for 10 seconds, and you gave me 5.
I gave you actually
No, you didn't. Well,
7
listen.
seconds.
In that community center, they have basketball and weights. Those are the same activities they have in prison. Basketball and weights. Put transformers, put relays, put stethoscopes in these kids' hands so they won't be picking up guns. Thank you.
Just come on up. Don't wait to be called.
Once again, Grisel Diaz Perez from 433 Vanderbilt Avenue. I just asked two little points that are not necessarily of a high-level concern, but are still within the concern aspect. And that is the speed limit in Hamilton Avenue, as everybody knows, the curve comes, right? It's been several accidents. You can actually research this, and that is a high point. It's very hot there. I would like to, humbly request to look into that to see if we can lower the speed limit on that. Is Hamilton Avenue into intersection with Vanderbilt, and that is close to the high school, the middle school where I was saying. And a lot of kids crossing back and forward. There were multiple pets casualty. I almost was a casualty. And just please look at the statistic to see if we can make any change on that. Also, in terms of the, the repercussions of all the contamination or the byproducts of all these warehousings and pharmaceuticals production, etc., we can do something. Let's talk about what we can do. We can create a program, right? We can create a program where we'll not necessarily incentivize monetarily a person, but give a kudo, a line in the newspaper. The person planned, like, for example, I don't ask him for it, but I planned like a 40 to 50 plants and trees on my property. I put solar panels. So I'm doing my part, and I'm not the only one. Okay, so the balance between what comes from our pockets to come a little bit greener in our community, right, it gets unbalanced with the repercussions of these warehouses and power plants or, productions areas. So we can do positive things about that. We can replant the right type of trees. Not all the trees will filter the air constantly. We need to have pine trees which can actually process the CO2, the fumes of these trucks. So when you do the research, right, it's very easy to know what type of tree we can actually provide to the people, or the people can actually plan. You say, hey, kudos, this person did something positive to help us, everybody. So those are the two things, the speed limits in Hamilton, the high-level incidence of accidents, and I would say the environmental impact of all this industrialization. Thank you.
Anyone else?
Okay, Jim Johnston, 34 Norwich Place. I was here last week. I made 2 points. One point I made was about the what happened in Bridgewater last month, and I also want to reiterate what I said last week about these zoning board meetings and the planning board meetings. The past 2 years, I've gone to many zoning board meetings, and I can tell you from experience, the way I see it, this whole system is rigged against the people. It's rigged in favor of the developers with their deep pockets. They bring their lawyers to every meeting. And if we private citizens want to bring a lawyer to represent us at these meetings, we have to spend thousands of dollars to hire a lawyer and bring him in. And I can tell you, I can't afford to do that. So I'm trying to think, is there anything that we can do if we go to these planning board meetings and zoning board meetings and there's no lawyer who represents us? What are we supposed to do? Can there be some kind of a public advocate who will advocate for us? So that's a thought I had. All right. So, but I want to thank you for voting in favor of the ordinance. I support the ordinance. I want to thank you for having the courage to vote yes on the ordinance. I think that's a good first step. All right. Thank you very much.
Anyone else wishing to speak?
How is everybody doing? My name is Darnell Asmar Johnson, Asmar B. Divine. I'm here today on behalf of Parkside and the people.
Your address, sir?
Huh? Is that's a part of this?
Address.
Chestnut Street. I live somewhere else, but I'm here on behalf of the people.
Okay, where you live? What is your address?
1534 Chestnut Street, South Plainfield, New Jersey.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. I was asked to come to this because there's a lot of things going on in the community that this stuff is happening because there's nobody there to help these kids really take them away from some of the stuff that's going on. I was a product, right? I did 16 years in the system. Me and this man right here was cat and mouse, Vaughn Larker, right? But I changed my life around. I've been on CBS, Fox, NBC, Ellen DeGeneres within the last 9 years. Why? Because I'm doing something with my son. We're doing a mentoring program, and this is the type of stuff that y'all need here. Everybody keep telling me I need to talk to you, but it's hard to get to you, Vaughn Larker. You know, but
not that hard. I'm in my office every day, all day.
I've tried.
Never came knocking on my door, Darnell.
But this is the thing. This stuff is going on because nobody's, y'all got the SCAP, but that's not really doing too much. Y'all need mentoring programs that people that can identify with these kids. Like I said, I was a product of this. This man, no, I'm not lying. I did 16 years going against him in Franklin Township. Why? Because I didn't have no direction. I had a mother, but I didn't have no direction. So I chose the street life. Now, like I said, back to my point, you guys gotta send people out there like me to get these kids. They gonna listen. They don't listen to me before they listen to any of y'all. I can get 2,000 people to come to the police station. Me. Why? Because people know I'm from that street. I'm from that block, and I've changed my life. And I'm an example right now today to tell these kids, look, that life that I did live, I don't live it no more. I got something going on. I got a book coming out and everything behind the life that I lived. So I'm an example to show these kids, just because of where you're from, it doesn't mean you can't turn out to be something because I'm somebody today. You know how I know that? Because I'm here talking to y'all. Not in a million years would I have ever thought I'd be sitting around police. But I'm cool with the mayor. I'm cool with Phil Murphy and everybody today because of what I'm doing today. But the people that have the same skin I have, they don't have that voice other than somebody like me. And I just want y'all to just hear me. That's it. And help the community instead of just sitting back doing nothing. All these murders is happening. All this violence is happening. Why? Because people sitting back. Like I said, they listen to me. They listen to me. And I thank y'all.
Anyone else wishing to speak?
I'm back. Jan Brandt, 22 Bryant Court. I want to thank you all for passing that ordinance today. Thank you very much. The first time I spoke, I guess it was a few weeks back, and I spoke to all of you, and I told you how Canal Walk, how the residents who face Metlers Road, we were very surprised about the proposed warehouse, because we had paid premium money to have those lots, $25,000 extra to be facing Metlers Road. And it all, since then, since I came to speak, because we were wondering, why would they tell us that this is a wonderful road to be on, but then I discovered that Metlers Road was actually a scenic corridor district overlay, and now it all makes sense why we had to pay so much more money. After reading the ordinance for scenic corridor district overlay, I'm very optimistic because I know you all will keep the developer and the building to this ordinance. And one of these, it's 7 pages long. Mark Healy actually printed it out for me. And just one of them says, to protect the township's remaining open spaces from conventional development patterns and measures that tend to compromise the intrinsic value of farmlands, fields, hedgerows, woodlands, mountain profiles, or ridgelines, plateaus, and water bodies and water courses. There's a lot more in this, but I'm very optimistic that the proposed warehouse, B9 schoolhouse, will have to go by all of this, and the street that I face, the Metlers Road, will still remain a scenic corridor. And I was wondering when there's applications, and let's say something like this arises, that it's discovered that it's on a scenic corridor district overlay, does the developer have to resubmit an application?
No, he does not have to resubmit an application. In this particular case, and I believe you've been told at least on one occasion, maybe more, by Mr. Healy, yes, and that the substantive review by staff has not taken place yet. The completeness review, which is not the substantive review, has taken place. And now, after the completeness review is done, staff members in all of the various disciplines will review those plans and apply the zoning ordinances where necessary, for instance with the scenic corridor overlay, to ensure that the application is in conformance with all of the zoning ordinances that it's subjected to. So the fact that it's not a resubmission, but there will be, and oftentimes in applications like this, there are multiple revisions of plans that are done before the final plan is approved for construction. So the substantive review will begin shortly on this particular application.
All right, thank you.
Anyone else?
Terry Thorson, 18 Labette Drive, Somerset.
Put the microphone down.
I always have that problem. Let me say it again. Terry Thorson, 18 Labette Drive, Somerset. Am I correct in assuming that the next master plan renovation or revisal is going to be to 2026?
Actually, I think it's 2024. I think this is the last major review of the master plan was 2018. Right? 2018? Yeah.
How does the public get input into that?
You attend planning board meetings?
I have.
That's how you get input.
Okay.
You attend planning board meetings.
I kind of sympathize a little bit with the people who have the property where the warehouses are. They did spend a lot of money on it. They spent a lot of money on lawyers, obviously. But when you think about the quality of life in Franklin Township, the gentleman who was talking about the one on Elizabeth Avenue that abuts Elizabeth Avenue School, have you read his application? Did you look at their own environmental impact statement, where they said they were going to cut down over 2,000 trees? Now, they'll plant some nice decorative trees here or there. But the transfer of carbon dioxide and oxygen will not be the same. The lady who said put evergreen trees out had a great idea, because they'll work every day of the year, whereas deciduous trees will only work when they have leaves. I've been dying to say this a couple meetings now. With the warehouses, we keep hearing, well, everybody's doing it in New Jersey because, we have this great location and we can transfer goods better than other people can. Just because everybody's doing it, are we supposed to do it? I bet at least one of your mothers said to you, if Joey jumped off the Brooklyn Bridge, would you do it? I know I heard that a lot of times when I was growing up. We're an outlier in Somerset County. We're not a Branchburg, we're not in the Shattuck Station, we're not a Hillsborough. Why do we have to do what other people do? Why can't we attract some different types of businesses, not warehouses? We have to be proactive. We can't just sit back and say, everybody else is doing it. Let's do that too. It's old hat. If everybody's doing warehouses, why are we doing it too? We've got to look for new opportunities. I know we jumped on the bandwagon with office space a number of years ago, and unfortunately COVID killed all that. But there's got to be other things out there that we can trade on that makes us unique in Somerset County, not just another location for warehouses. Thank you.
I'd just like to make one statement here. COVID didn't kill office buildings. Office buildings were dead long before COVID. They were gone. They were empty, and they were gone. And not going to happen.
Anyone else wishing to speak?
Seeing no one, I move that we close public comment.
Second.
Moved in second, and all in favor of closing public comment, say aye.
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 Opposed, say nay. Public comment is closed. Do I have a motion to adjourn the meeting?
So moved.
Second.
Moved in second, and all in favor of adjournment, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. We are adjourned. Be well, Franklin.
Good night.